Well, it's a sad day. Both of Alabama's Crimson Tide and the Georgia Bulldogs are done for the 2023 season. Jake, it's just crazy that the season went by so far, but here we are, episode 36 of the Just Sayin Podcast. In this episode, we're going to break down the New Year's Six bowl games. Regardless of Alabama losing and Georgia winning, there were some great playoff games. I mean, I think both of us can attest that very competitive game, a competitive and very interesting game coming up on Monday. Congrats to Michigan and congrats to Washington for advancing to the national championship game. I think we got a good one ahead of us. But on this episode, we're gonna review all those New Year's Six games that we previewed last week. We're gonna go ahead and talk about the Michigan and Washington game that's coming up. It's gonna be a fun one, I think. We're gonna give out some helmet stickers too from bowl season. I pretty much did all New Year's Six games for my helmet stickers. I know you had one that wasn't, but it's another
Oh, yeah.
good helmet stickers edition for us. Just kind of end the season off, and then a lot happening with the transfer portal in the last 48 hours, especially with Alabama. So losing in the playoff game that's going to happen. I'm surprised that there wasn't as many with Texas, but I don't know. I guess their roster's in a different spot than Alabama's is. But Jake, let's hop right into it. Since I was at the Rose Bowl, I was at the game. I'll give my take second. I want to just kind of know what you thought about the game. Go ahead and kick us off because I mean, there's a lot to discuss with all these games. But Michigan 27, Alabama 20 in overtime. Go ahead and tell me what you thought. You had an aerial view. I did not. So
Yeah. There was a lot to unpack about this game. It was very physical, and that's what we knew what it was going into this game. We ended up both being wrong. We thought December 2nd was the national championship. Who knows what game was the national championship now? Because it's Michigan, Washington. Michigan was just the better team against Alabama. I mean, let me talk about the special teams though, because this game should not have been a game. One, it shouldn't have been in overtime. If you take away the one mistake on a PAT, I mean, that would have ended in regulation 21-20. But Michigan's special teams was abhorrent. It was garbage. So, I mean, going to look at their punting stats, their punter averaged 39 and a half yards, which is really bad because it's not like he was pinning those in the 20. He had 0 in the 20.
yeah,
He was really bad. And then obviously the two muff punts, one they got on and didn't really harm them. But the first one, I mean, and talking about special teams, Alabama's punter, James Burnip, was on fire all day,
Mhm.
except for the very first punt. The first punt was a bad one. It was a line drive that only went 38 yards. And he could have easily returned it for 15, 20 yards, 10 to 15 yards, gotten into their side of the field and, would have been on the 40 or so. And then muffed it. And then Alabama takes over on a short field, goes 40 yards and scores. So, I mean, this game and Alabama's kicker, Will Reichard, been hot all year. He made two 50-plus yard field goals. Michigan missed their only field goal of the night. I think it was a 46-yarder, 47-yarder, somewhere around there. So still a little long. But, I mean, Michigan was just a more physical team. Their run defense wasn't tremendous. The running backs were having a little bit of success, but that pass rush was getting home every single time. And one was because their D line was just whipping Alabama's O line, kind of what we've seen all year. I think a lot of people looked at that Georgia game and they said the Alabama line was whipping Georgia. That really wasn't what it was. I think Jalen Milroe was winning because I saw a stat because I was listening to Josh Pate. He was saying the same thing, how that's kind of the one game they were dominant. And I saw a stat today that Georgia had a 41% pressure rate success pressure rate against Alabama. Michigan had like a 37, I think. So, I mean, Jalen Milroe was just making plays on December 2nd that he wasn't. What day was that? On New Year's Day.
Yeah.
He wasn't making the plays. He had a really, really bad day. He couldn't make some throws. And this is what I said. You said I was being disrespectful for it. But Alabama's lack of weapons. I mean, that came out. Michigan had a lack of weapons. I said Alabama had a lack of weapons. You didn't think so. I mean, it proved the case in this game. Nobody could get open. Jalen Milroe couldn't make plays with his legs. I mean, it was just a defensive battle all the way around. And J.J. McCarthy, he didn't play tremendous, but he played definitely well enough to win. 17 for 27, 221, and 3 touchdowns. And could have been more. I saw Michigan had 3 or 4 drops. Specifically like Trey Morgan, the one that muffed the punt the very first time, did not play super well. But saw a freshman, Tyler Morris, who I think had 2 catch. No, 10 catches going into the game. Had a pretty big day with a touchdown. So I mean, Michigan played really well.
Too. That was a really bad busted coverage, but you got to give it to him. He fought for that extra yard to score the touchdown.
Yeah. So Michigan played really well. I thought Bama was going to win. I thought Bama was going to win by 10 plus. And it was kind of the exact opposite where, I mean, Michigan dominated the game.
Yeah, and at one point, and I know I was listening to Josh Pate's podcast on my drive home today, but at one point you've got to wonder with this Michigan team who is very experienced. I mean, we know that, you know that from 2021 when you guys played them, blew them out, right? Blew them out in that playoff game. They were really young then. I mean, JJ McCarthy wasn't even the starter at that point. I think he was a freshman then, and he was battling with McNamara. So, a bunch of those guys were real young in that point in time. Then last year they get their heart absolutely torn out of them losing to TCU late, and it was because of JJ McCarthy. And going in this game, a lot of people were, Alabama's talking about the length would let all naysayers know. JJ McCarthy let all the naysayers know in this game. I mean, he showed that he could he can play with the best of them. I even called him a game manager last week, and I said it not with a negative connotation. I made sure that I pointed that out when I said it, but he made some plays in this game. The one that I thought was the biggest one was the reverse play. I don't know if you remember that, where he threw it off his back.
Great catch.
I mean, it was a great catch, but the fact that he got that ball off with Dallas Turner in his face, and again, Dallas Turner put in a position where he could hit a quarterback really hard. And I noticed that, he hit him pretty hard, and it took McCarthy a minute to get up. Like, he crawled for a couple of seconds, but he got back up and he kept fighting. And that's the thing about J.J. McCarthy. He's a competitor, and you can tell he was. Oh, there goes my.
They always have.
But
happens every episode.
It happens every time. But yeah, and you talked about Jalen Milroe playing poorly. I wouldn't necessarily said he played awful. I felt bad for him because I don't think we put him in a position to win. I'm not saying the play calling was bad. I'm not saying any of that, but just the constant pressure in his face, the really bad snapping, which has been a problem all season that Alabama has not figured out. And that falls back on Nick Saban. That falls back on the offensive coaching staff, because that problem should have been addressed in week 2 after the Texas game, and it wasn't. It was allowed to continue all season. It even happened in the Georgia game. I think there was at least 1 or 2 snaps in the Georgia game that were or fumbled or something happened.
Luckily, it never bit them in the Georgia game, but there were some snaps where Jalen Milroe picked it up on the ground. And I mean, kind of like what you said, there was a drive where it was just negated because there were 2 bad snaps.
2 bad snaps.
That's not all on the center, Seth McLaughlin. Like, Jalen Milroe's got to take some responsibility for that. Nick Saban's got to take some responsibility. When there's a lack of communication, and it's not just a bad snap, when there's lack of communication and both people don't know what's happening, that goes on everyone, especially the head coach. So it's not all on the center.
But it's also, I saw a play on that first bad snap of that drive. The Michigan linebacker hit the side of his leg, and it sounded like a clap. And as soon as he hit the side of his leg, McLaughlin snapped the ball. So that is a penalty. I'm not going to complain about it, because, I mean, if you're Michigan and you're able to do that, I'd do it too. I'd do the same. If I was Alabama, if you flip the situation there, I would have done the same thing. But yes, it's not all on Seth. And it is, and in this game, I think Nick Saban even mentioned it in the post game. Milroe, a couple of the sacks were on him because he didn't slide the protection to the correct spots. So the O-line playing bad, sure, they didn't play great, but Milroe didn't help from a protection sliding standpoint. I didn't think Milroe, when he did throw the ball to receivers, threw the ball bad. I mean, he completed 16 of 23 passes. He only threw 7 incompletions, and a couple of the incompletions were 50-50 balls. I think one to Jermaine Burton down the sideline, just didn't get caught. And then another one to Kendrick Law. I don't think it was a great read, the deep ball he threw, because the safety was over top of the receiver. I would have never thrown that ball, but nonetheless, it was a 50-50 ball. So I wasn't displeased with Milroe's performance. I just think we were never able to find momentum on offense. We were never able to figure something out. Now, we did run the ball well. I thought Jason McClellan ran the ball very well. And then when Justice Haynes came in the game, he provided a little spark to the offense when he ran the ball. So yes, I think we underrated Michigan's defense. I mean, we talked about it. I even said last week, I know they're the number 1 or number 2 defense statistically, but they hadn't played anybody. Well, it didn't matter, because Michigan showed up, and they, with their number 2 pass rated secondary, they played lights out. They were able to get pressure. And then on the flip side, Alabama's defense wasn't able to do that. Only 1 sack by Dallas Turner to Michigan 6, 5 in the first half. So yeah, they were getting after the quarterback. They played aggressive. And to be honest with you, Jake, like you said, they were the better team from start to finish. I thought Alabama had momentum at one point in the game. That's when McClellan scored his second touchdown. Michigan went 3 and out. They punted, and then Milroe fumbled on the first play. And once he fumbled, Michigan got all the momentum right back. And they had the momentum, I want to say at least, of the 63 minutes played in the game. They probably had the momentum for more than 45 minutes of that game just because I thought they controlled the game very well. And for Michigan on offense, Alabama, a few busted coverages caught them. The busted coverage for the first touchdown to Blake Corum, the busted coverage on the Dylan Morris touchdown catch. So, in all, Michigan was the better team. Nick Saban was outcoached by Jim Harbaugh, and that's just kind of what it boiled down to. And this was a classic game, a great setting. I had a great time out there in Pasadena. The Rose Bowl is everything people say and more. I mean, it's so like you pull up, Jake. It's on the Rose Bowl is literally on a 2-lane road. So you can imagine trying to get out of the traffic after the game. It took us an hour and a half to get out. But there is literally no parking lots. We parked on a golf course. We literally pulled our car up right next to the green. And I was just thinking, man, I would hate to be these greenkeepers who, have to take care of the grass and all this stuff after the game. But Michigan fans were really nice. It was a great time. I was 3 rows up. Yeah,
Michigan fans were nice.
Michigan fans did not trash talk. They were pretty nice. I mean, I sat 3 rows up, had a great seat, great view. It was a great time. I mean, it was depressing. It was disappointing to lose, but the better team won that night. And sometimes you, as a fan, you just got to live with that. So I can live with it and move on. But
there's just
it sucks that we lost.
A few more things I want to add. Before the game, I said, I didn't think it was going to be a game. Let me put that out there. But there was a path to success for Michigan. And I said, if they play it the way Georgia did, where Alabama's been an explosive offense all year, you got to limit those explosives. I think Alabama's longest play was the 34-yard rush. Outside of that, I don't think they had a play go for more than 20 yards. And you mentioned it. They might have had one. But you mentioned it, the 50-50 balls, 0 of those were completed against Georgia. 0 of those were completed against Michigan. There was, I think, 4, maybe 3, not many. They didn't have any success through the air. You mentioned, Jalen Milroe went 16 for, what was it, 23?
Yeah.
But he only had 116 yards. So those were pretty much all around or behind the line of scrimmage, almost all of them. And it was just yards after the catch.
Also, I did want to comment on what you said about the Alabama playmakers. You're right. Alabama does not have a superstar on this roster. I think they have a lot of really good pieces, especially at running back. I think there's a lot of good pieces there. And I think there's some good pieces at receiver and tight end. There's just not that one superstar. So, like Jermaine Burton, Isaiah Bond, neither one of those guys are receiver ones in college football. I think they're both very good receiver twos if you put them in the right spot. Alabama just doesn't have a receiver one, and that's kind of showed throughout the entire season. So I wouldn't say there aren't any good options there. I do think there are. But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, when it comes down to a playoff game like this, you saw, and we're about to talk about it in a second, Washington could have 2 or 3 receiver ones on their team. Texas has 2 receiver ones on their team with Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell.
And a very good wide receiver 3.
And I don't even think Michigan has a wide receiver 1, but the way they play offense, it doesn't matter. That's
what I was saying. Alabama's receivers aren't bad. Alabama's receivers are never going to be bad. But compared to their prior standards, they don't have a playmaker. Yes. Their best one, because Jermaine Burton was pushed out by Ladd McConkey before Ladd McConkey was great. Ladd McConkey was good back then. And Jermaine Burton, after, putting up 200+ yards against Mississippi State and 3 touchdowns, was pushed out and lost playing time to him and had to transfer to Alabama where he could try to be the wide receiver 1. And he puts up stats like these, and I mentioned to you before, it was so great to see him cramp up on the last play of the game and end his college career like that. Tremendous. But Isaiah Bond, he owes me $300 because I 5 on Prize Picks. He was the only one that didn't hit because I bet Trey Harris over receiving yards, which hit in like 10 minutes. I did Rivaldo Fairweather over yards, which hit in like 15 minutes. Jalen Milroe under his passing yards, which was never a doubt. And then Isaiah Bond. Oh, wait, what was my 5th? I can't remember. But Isaiah Bond over receiving yards, and he was 9 short.
So how many did he have? Well, what was his projection?
55.5.
Okay.
47.
it wasn't a bad bet because towards the end of the year, I mean, you're right. Like Jermaine
Oh,
Burton,
I thought it was great. It was
yeah,
great.
like Jermaine Burton, I think from the A&M game on was kind of the receiver one because he had that huge game against A&M where he just dominated. But towards the end of the year, from like the Auburn game till now, I mean, Milroe and Bond had that connection. I mean, after the 4th and 36 and in the Iron Bowl, they had a great connection. And then in the Georgia game, he went to him like 4 times in a row on that one drive and that flip on 3rd and 2, which ended up being one of the plays of the game. I mean, it was evident that Bond was the guy Milroe was going to, but just
And
everybody was shut down in this game. So
that's what he was doing this game. I mean, like you said, everybody was shut down. One of the other things I hate seeing people trash talk on, like Alabama fans trash talking on, not trash talking their own team on Twitter, saying that the Tommy Reese was calling bad plays. I thought he called a good game. Like he was taking advantage of Jalen. One thing that Alabama fans and you were complaining about all year, they weren't calling plays to his standard, to his skill
it's
set.
great.
He was doing that this game. Like Jalen Milroe had many plays where he took off and ran, and one of those plays is the big fumble that cost him the momentum because he could have swung it out to forget who. I think Roydell Williams was back, maybe Jason McClellan, and there was a wide open 20 yards, and he just didn't do that. He didn't play that well, and so like on the very last play of the game, I thought that was a tremendous play from Tommy Reese where he had a swing route that would have been there to snap, set things off. He still could have potentially had it. But right after the snap, he decided to go up and run. And instead of bouncing outside where he had a wide open lane, he went straight up the middle. And so that play had two different routes to success to a touchdown. And then he took the one that wasn't. So I
Well,
thought Tommy Reese called a decent, not a tremendous game.
yeah, that's what I was gonna
He,
say. I
he
thought it
called
was
it to Jalen Milroe's skill set. And that
but
was one thing that Bama fans complained about all year he wasn't doing. And then he did it that in this game. And now people are saying the same thing on the opposite side.
I complained about it from the Texas game during the Texas game, and after the Texas game, I thought Tommy Reese did a great job. Well, obviously USF Jalen Milroe didn't play, but I've been talking about all season how Tommy Reese from the USF point and on, he was able to call a game around Milroe's skill sets. I thought throughout the rest of the year he's been able to do that. Now, obviously, you're hearing some of the bad apples on. You're going to see some of the bad apples
Oh,
on
100%.
a lot of Alabama fans, I can tell you, do not feel that way. Now, and you know this too, when you're in the stands at a game, you can't tell really just by watching the play once, because on TV you're seeing close-ups, you're seeing replays and stuff. I saw the play happen one time, and what I saw just from that, I was like, wow, that was a terrible call. And I was telling people that in the stands, I was like, why would he run up the middle on that play? But when I went back and reviewed the play, now, some people are saying, well, it was a bubble screen to Roydell, who was the receiver in motion, or it was a bubble screen to Kobe Prentice on the outside. I don't think that was the case because the right guard, Jaden Roberts, pulled. He came back over to the left side. So I thought it was just a design run. And Alabama couldn't throw the ball at all at that point in the game anyway. So I was like, why would you throw the ball anyway on 4th down and 3? Why wouldn't you just put your best playmaker in a position to win the game? And that's Jalen Milroe. And even Milroe said after the game, he was acting like it was a run. Milroe just did not let Jaden Roberts get over there in time. But a lot of that can be due. I mean, I'm not saying it's the snap's fault, but the snap doesn't make anything better. It creates mismatches in timing because when you have to look down to catch the ball, you're taking your eyes off the defense. So there's timing that's messed up. You're not gonna be able to see everything like you would normally see it. So the snap definitely had something to do with it. But you're right. I mean, Milroe didn't hit the hole. He didn't wait on his blocker. So there's a lot of things, but when it came down to it, it was just poor execution.
Yeah.
So that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. The last thing is I love parity in college football now, and it's partly because of the transfer portal. I saw a tweet out today, and on that last play, part of what blew it up was Josiah Stewart, edge rusher from Coastal Carolina, who was really good at Coastal Carolina, transferred to Michigan, has been okay this year, not great, better week in and week out. He absolutely blew up J.C. Latham, who's going to be a top 3 tackle in the draft. Absolutely blew him up and pushed him all the way back. And like I said, partly blew up the play. And so it's things like that through the transfer portal that make it more parity in college football. But also the days of, and you mentioned the big momentum shift where it was all the way in Michigan's favor for almost the whole game. And then I think it was beginning of the fourth quarter where what you said happened, where they had that
Alabama
touchdown
had a sliver,
and
a
then 3
very
and
small
out.
sliver.
Those are the moments that used to be 2020 and before. When that happened, it was like, oh, Bama won the game. And there was nothing that you could do to stop it. It happened, like I said, all the way up until 2020. And then 2021 is where it kind of shifted, where Bama got that momentum against Georgia in that national championship when Stetson Bennett had the fumble, and I think it was Jordan Battle who accidentally picked it up, but it was their ball. Had all the momentum in that game. Georgia ended up coming back. Happened last year where Tennessee had all the momentum the whole game. Alabama suddenly goes up. I think it was on a strip sack fumble. Maybe got it by Dallas Turner, maybe got a
Yeah,
touchdown.
you're right.
It was like, up, game's over. And then Tennessee ends up winning that one. It was the exact same in this one. And the same thing happened against Auburn, where Auburn very easily could have won, and that was a really bad team. These are all good teams. Auburn was a really bad team. If they were decent enough, they would have prevented all that. But it happened in this game where it was like, up, Alabama's got the momentum. They're not letting go. And then Michigan can turn that around. So it's just great. Not saying that as an Alabama hater. It's just good to see parity in college football because you have a team like Michigan who has been decent but hasn't been able to get to that spot, who can go to the Natty. And then also a team like Washington who has been doubted all year. People have picked against them every single week, can make it to the national championship because of that parity in college football. So I love it.
But what Nick Saban said back in 2000, whenever I think it was 2021, when when NIL was first getting, discussed and the transfer portal was just starting to occur, Nick Saban said the richer were going to get rich, even more rich than what happened. So this, like that guy, Josiah Stewart, perfect example. In the old days and age of college football, he would still be at Coastal Carolina.
Yeah.
He probably maybe even in the NFL draft, but since he was able to transfer over to Michigan, his talents are now going to be displayed on the biggest and brightest moments. And so, like with the transfer portal with NIL, sure, maybe, in Indiana can get a better player than what they were going to have. But the superstars are going to go to the best teams. They're not going to go play at, Indiana or Iowa or places like that. And then when you're talking about the Alabama thing, yeah, I mean, we've seen a change in 2021. I mean, what was Alabama's MO, Jake, before like 2020? They went on the road and they beat you at your own house. Since 2021, I mean, Alabama's definitely got more wins than they have losses. I mean, it's probably in the 75% win category, but they've lost way more games on the road than they have on a percentage than they did in that first part of the Saban era. So you're starting to see a lot of trends that, Alabama during when we were winning all those national championships didn't have that now we are having. To say that we couldn't win a national championship is still, I think, a little ridiculous because, I mean, with talent, all the talent
Who
we
said
have.
that?
Well, I'm not saying you said it. I'm just saying in
Oh,
general.
I thought you were. I
But
was going to say I never said
there's
that.
definitely trends that you don't want to see still that are kind of coming back that Alabama hasn't had in a long time. But um, we just talked about Alabama for a long time. This is a game, and I'll go ahead and give my opinion on this game because I wasn't able to watch it. I was in Pasadena. I After the game, me and my buddy Christian, who I went to the game with, we went to Hollywood. We drove down Rodeo Drive, went to Beverly Hills. So that was fun. Got In-N-Out Burger, but literally walked into the hotel with 1 minute left on the clock in the Washington Texas game. Washington was up 37-31. So I got to see a little bit of the madness at the end of the game. Texas had a chance. I mean, I thought when he threw that ball to A.D. Mitchell in the left corner, I was like, surely A.D. Mitchell was going to come down with that ball, and he didn't. So what does Washington do best this year, Jake? They hang on at the last second to win the game, and they did it again. I mean, I think they have 10 games where they have one score wins or something like that. It was like 8 or 10 games, which is just
It's
absolutely
it's
insane.
it's 10 in a row.
10 in a row. Yeah,
Well,
that's
not one
really
score, single digit wins. It
single
might be
digit.
nine. It might be nine, but a lot.
That's still a lot. And I mean, you want to talk about TCU did that a lot last year as well. I mean, they kind of did that. So does that beg the question? And we'll talk about this a little bit later because obviously Georgia obliterated TCU last
Yeah,
year.
you know who else did it this year? That was left out. FSU.
So Georgia obliterated them this last year. Does Michigan obliterate Washington? I think not. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's a very interesting matchup. But Washington took care of business against a Texas team that a lot of people thought they were not going to win. A lot of the same people who have thought they weren't going to win several games this year, whether that was against Oregon, Oregon State, whoever the case may be. But I mean, Michael Penix, this dude is just the best player on the field whenever he steps on the field. I mean, just looking at stats, I mean, he was absolutely amazing. It hurts that they lose Dylan Johnson at the very. I mean, what a just crazy occurrence at the end of that game. Could have just taken knees instead of handing the ball off, but now your star tailback's probably going to miss the national championship game. And then all the usual suspects like Roma Dunze, Jalen Polk, McMillan, all those guys go absolutely off in this game. Washington's offense is something just it's so fun to watch, and their defense held up, and that's what I thought. I mean, haven't like I said, haven't watched the full game. Have only really seen highlights, but just looking at the stat sheet, it doesn't surprise me that they won this game, but they were in control of this game too, it looks like. I mean, they were up by 13 at one point. So you watched the game more than I did. I'll let you give your take, but I mean, I kind of said it last week. I said Washington was going to win this game. I was dead on the money. I said 38-31. It was 37-31. I was 1 point off in my point prediction. I was dead on it. I want to go back and watch the game, but you were able to watch it. So give us your take.
I can't remember what I said. I wish I did. I can't remember either one of the scores I said. I might go back and watch and see how close I was. But I mean, you were close on the score. You were going back and forth with Texas and Washington. I was dead set on Washington the whole time. And sometimes stats lie going into the game. Stats did not lie going into this game.
Yeah.
Texas had a really good run defense. Washington couldn't run the ball all that effectively. I mean, Dylan Johnson, their best running back, had 2.3 yards per carry. They couldn't really run the ball, but what they sucked at this year and were, I think, 97th, around 100th in the whole nation doing was pass defense. They were atrocious at it. And Michael Penix and co, I mean, just took over this game. And that's one of the things, I mean, because you didn't watch the game, I'm sure you've seen a couple of highlights here and there. Washington's receivers are top 3 in the nation, top 4, maybe behind Texas, maybe behind potentially Missouri, maybe behind LSU. Anyway, they're a really good core. Michael Penix is so good. There are a lot of plays where he could only put it in one spot. And I'm not talking about 10-yard slants. I'm not talking about 10-yard curls. These are 35, 45-yard downfield throws that he places in a bucket. I couldn't
What's
drop
even more impressive, Jake, is some of them are off his back foot, and he just
yeah, you saw that
right
one
through a
play
keyhole, right through a keyhole. I mean,
he
ridiculous.
flicked it, and it was the absolute dot. And it's really bad when you go and look at the defensive stats for Texas, and their second leading tackler was their number 1 corner. That means he was getting picked on all day. Ryan Watts, I mean, I saw the back of his jersey more times than I saw the front of his. And it was just, he was getting picked on the whole game by Rome Odunze, by Jalen McMillan, by Jalen Polk. I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, Rome Odunze, 125 yards, Polk, 122 yards. I mean, I had his over, Michael Penix's over, and that hit almost in the first half. He had 260 in the first half, and his over was 319 and a half. So that was never a doubt. But looking at this game and watching it, Washington was in control the whole entire game. At halftime, I think they were up by 7. And it was one of those games that could have gone either way. But in the second half, they kind of took over. Texas, one of the things that forced them into a hole is they had 2 fumbles, one by each back. And Washington just kicked field goals, kind of took over. And this game shouldn't have been close at the end. It was 37-31. Washington was just chewing clock. That's all they were doing. And then all of a sudden, on the last play of their drive on 3rd and goal, or it was like 3rd and 9 at the 50, Dylan Johnson gets hurt.
Yeah.
And what sucks for them is he got hurt and time stops and it didn't start again. I don't know why that rule exists. I don't really like it. I think it should start once everybody's set and ready to go, because Texas didn't have any timeouts. They had already wasted them.
Right.
So Texas, when they should have had 10 seconds to go 70 yards, because also on the punt, it was a really good punt, placed them at, I think, the 12 or so. The long snapper touched the punt returner, so they got to go another 15 yards. When they should have had 15 seconds to go that many yards, they had a minute and 10 seconds. So that's what ultimately almost ended up biting them in the butt, because Texas started driving. Jordan Whittington had a huge catch. It'll say how
that was a huge catch. I mean,
41 yards. It was insane. As soon as it happened, I was like, oh, because they had 45 seconds to go 35 yards, I think. And then they got down to the 12-yard line with 20 seconds left, had 3 straight plays at the end zone. Didn't hit on any of them because it was a tremendous play by the corner in the end zone. But so this was an all-time classic. I had watched the first 50 minutes downstairs in the living room, came back up for the last 10 minutes, thought I was just going to go to sleep. And then Texas made it an actual game. So it was great. And so fun to see on Twitter, on Instagram, on just anything, analysts talking about this game. Take like Kirk Herbstreit and I think Greg McElroy. They both said things about it. And this is what Greg McElroy said specifically, where these teams backed up Alabama making the playoff, and Alabama is the better team. Yeah. I think FSU should have gotten in. When they talk about Washington, they say things like, and like Greg McElroy said, they just find a way to win. And that's exactly what FSU did this year. Yeah, FSU was counted out for it, and Washington got in. And FSU just got blown out by 60 to us. Obviously, they were missing a lot of players. But I just don't like it how the college football committee can take things into their hands and say this is what was going to happen. Who knows? Because Ohio State won the Natty with a third string quarterback that year. FSU could have done the same thing because they had the offense and their defense is really good when they have all their players around them. They could have done the same thing. Washington was 9.5-point favorites against Oregon, ended up winning that game. They were 4.5, 5.5-point favorites against Texas. They ended up winning this game and they won it pretty handily. I know the score was really close and it came down to the last play of the game. But if they just don't happen to have a freak injury, they win the game easily. And then they're 4.5-point favorites against, or not favorites, underdogs against Michigan. They might win that game. So FSU, and I think this can be a good transition into that game. FSU, I don't think should have gotten left out of the playoff because they could have done this. They could have pulled off not necessarily a Cinderella because they were good all year, but I mean, kind of like 2015 with Ohio State, they could have pulled that off. So who knows what would have happened if FSU got in.
I want to say one more thing about the playoff real quick.
Go ahead.
A lot of people are talking about how Alabama shouldn't have gotten in. Well, let's just say for kicks, Georgia beats Alabama. Okay. Flip the score. Georgia wins 27, Alabama loses 27-24 to Georgia. Georgia gets in. So you're looking at a playoff that's number 1 Georgia, number 2 Michigan, number 3 Washington, and number 4 Texas. Well, Texas still was going to get in over FSU regardless. Like this conversation FSU would still be 5th, and people would be having the same conversation about Texas. So it was 2 teams ahead of FSU. I mean, the committee thought 2 teams were better than an undefeated FSU without a quarterback. So I think that speaks volumes too. I mean, people forget that. And I'm not saying it as an Alabama fan because if it even still, I mean, there were 2 teams that the committee deemed better than FSU on a neutral field that they would have favored and that they would put in. 2 teams were more deserving in their eyes than FSU was. So yes, like we said earlier this year, it sucks that we didn't make it. But the fact that FSU fans are still crying on Twitter, like Danny Cannell, like cry, Danny, cry. Like that's so bad. That like y'all, I think Josh Pate said something, UCF, they deemed themselves the national champions in 2017. They got great marketing out of that. I mean, a lot of people know who UCF is now because of that, right?
Yeah.
FSU could have done something similar with this situation, but no, they have just been crying and complaining and whining about it on Twitter. And then they go get beat 63-3 by Georgia. It was never close. No one actually, when they forced Georgia to punt that first drive, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, the first drive, I was like,
oh no.
And then after that, it was a splattering.
It just was a landslide after that. And I think everyone saw it coming. I mean, 20 points was pretty fair. I thought that was pretty fair. And it would end up being 60. So it's only FSU. It's crazy that FSU fans are still crying about not making it in the playoffs after losing by 60. But, whatever. I mean, next year, if you win the ACC, you're in the playoff automatically. So maybe next year they'll get a shot at it. But yeah.
Yeah, my whole thing, because I think FSU should have got in. I think Alabama made it a better game. FSU could have pulled off the Cinderella. It was just the fact that ESPN analysts like Kirk Herbstreit and Greg McElroy, who backed up Washington getting in, saying all they did was just win. FSU did the exact same thing. So they're hypocritical by what they're saying.
Well, I think they're just saying that. I mean, I think it's the same thing. If let's say Michael Penix gets hurt, I mean, that's what Kirk Herbstreit's saying. Kirk Herbstreit and Greg 100%. Are both saying, and Greg McElroy is I think he was FSU should get in. Like he was in the FSU camp, but Kirk's was in the Bama camp and the Texas camp. But his big thing was FSU is not the same team without Jordan Travis. I mean, they're not. And it was shown that. I mean, even they're not the same thing without Tate Rodemaker. And they didn't have Tate Rodemaker either. So, I mean, and then FSU fans want to go compare Brock Glenn's passing stats to that of Jalen
Milroe's. Oh, that's so funny.
Brock Glenn, I think 90 of his passing stats came like against when they were down by like 27 or something like that. So, I mean, FSU fans can make distinctions like that all they want to, college football fans, but it is what it is. But let me just tell you, if Brock Glenn would have been playing against Michigan,
it would have been bad.
It would have been very bad.
Michigan. Like you were saying, don't take the Alabama fans that are saying things about Tommy Rees on Twitter. Don't take them seriously.
You're right.
Obviously, don't take because those are
a lot more.
Those are just trolls saying Brock Glenn is better. Because obviously Brock Glenn didn't have a good day. He went 9 for 26, 139. He did drop 2 absolute dots.
Yeah, he had
one was completed, and it was like Daniel Harris was one guarding a freak cornerback. He's like 6'3", runs a 4.4. Insane, gonna be great. He was one of the ones staying. but he was all over the receiver. And I kid you not, there was like this much room to place the ball, and he placed it exactly. And it was 55 yards down the field. It
Yeah.
wasn't
It
like
was
a
a good
20,
throw. It was a good throw.
55 yards. And the exact same thing happened where he needed to place it literally this much to throw because Javon Bullard was all over the receiver, this much to place the ball. And he did the exact same thing. Unfortunately, the receiver dropped it.
And let's
But
be
I,
honest, Brock Glenn was given an uphill battle, and I mean
yeah,
the dude was a warrior. I mean, I came away with a lot more respect for him than I had going into it. I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. I
yeah,
mean, you did too, I'm sure, because Georgia threw everything they had and more. I mean, it's pretty embarrassing when Will Muschamp's son's going in there running for 30 yards downfield. I mean, that was so funny. And I was sitting at a Japanese.
Muschamp, Jackson Muschamp, the absolute GOAT got playing time. And it's just crazy.
That's so funny.
One of my bets was Carson Beck over yards, and I thought that was a lock.
Didn't
I
hit.
didn't I didn't take into account that he was only going to play 30 minutes. He did not play a single snap in the second half, so that got rebooted, which shout out
Oh,
Prize
did
Pick.
it? Did
They
it? Shout out.
rebooted
Yeah.
since he
Shout out.
didn't. He only played 30 minutes. I thought he was at least going to play one more drive when he came in. He was out. Gunnar Stockton was in, and then the whole fourth quarter was for Colin Drake and Jackson Muschamp. Jackson Muschamp, the GOAT. He got playing time. But this game, absolute murder. It was all the way around.
Yeah.
Even and one thing that Georgia fans are trolling FSU on Twitter for, they're saying how R3s blew them out. R3s did. Like this, I think R3s compared to their ones, or I guess ones
Well,
through
there's one
three,
slash two slash
it
three.
was 20-0. Like I mean, everyone was getting playing time. Everyone was getting touchdowns. Gunnar Stockton had two passing touchdowns, and everybody was just going off this game. So it
Yeah.
was great to see. And I think my one thing taken away from this is seeing, and we talked about it before the game, seeing the younger players playing this game, and then also Michael Williams. He's not young. He's going to be a top 5 pick in the draft next year, probably. But he didn't officially switch yet, but he's playing outside linebacker next year. And he got some reps there this game, and he had a strip sack fumble recovery, all three of those. And so he played a tremendous game. I think he ranked fourth in all defenders this bowl season with his PFF grade of like a 92. So that was great to see. And then also, like I said, the young players, we only had freshman linebackers playing this game. Well, we had three freshman inside linebackers and a walk-on playing at inside linebacker. And then outside linebackers, just pretty much all freshmen, and then Michael Williams getting some run. And then corners, a lot of the freshmen playing. And Dalen Everett, who has kind of been picked on this season, has slowly gotten better and better and better. I thought he played really well against Alabama, even though he gave up that touchdown to Jermaine Burton. He was all over him. Had a pick six, or not pick six. He had an interception this game. So it was just, like we said, it was murder all the way around. Good to see the young players get some run. Anthony Evans, Lawson Lucky, all had their first touchdown. So great to
Yeah.
see it on next year.
Not much to say. I mean, exactly what we thought was going to happen, just amplified times three, I think. So yeah, good for Georgia to go out with a win. Good for those. I know Kirby was really happy for those seniors who ended up winning 50 games in their career. But that's an outstanding, task completed for them. So, but I
Yeah,
will
and
get to the game. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
that's with a short 2020 season where they only played 10 games and won 8 of them. So very impressive that they got up to 50 wins in 4 years.
Well, I mean, when you're winning 29 games in a row.
Yeah.
But I'll get to a game that I think we talked a little bit about last week, more than really any other New Year's Six game that wasn't a playoff game, and that was Ole Miss Penn State. I mean, you want to talk about two completely different philosophies on both teams. Ole Miss gets the win, 38-25 over Penn State, and this was a game for a half. I mean, it was very close going into halftime, but in the second half, Ole Miss just took over, and this just how they took over in this game in the second half, paired with who they're going to have on their team next year, is scary for the SEC because I mean, let's just be honest. Next year, they're going to have a great team. I mean, just looking at their roster without looking at anything else, without seeing them play on the field, knowing that Lane Kiffin's their head coach, he's a really good coach. Pete Golding's kind of coming into his own as a defensive coordinator there. Now, this will be his second year there. They are going to be absolutely a force next year in the SEC. I expect them to be competing for the SEC championship game. Not saying they're going to be in the game, but I expect them to be at the top of the ladder there. Jackson Dart, man, a guy you haven't been high on this year. The number one defense in Penn State. Yes, they were missing their two starting DBs and Chop Robinson, but they still had some very quality players out there.
And Abdul Carter left the game too.
Yeah, he left the game late, but and let me just say, he's gonna be a player.
He's gonna
Number 11, he looks like Micah Parsons 2.0. I mean, he like not only does he have the same number, but just the way he moves, the way he looks. But I mean, Jackson Dart really picked them apart in the second half. And Trey Harris is a big helper there. I mean, what a receiver he's been all season for them. But and then number 19 too. I forgot his name, but he's also another really good receiver, a little slot receiver that they have. And they handed the ball yeah, they handed the ball to Quinshawn in this game 34 times, and I think he only had like 100 yards. That just goes to show you how good that Penn State front seven is, and they pride themselves on that. But Quinshawn ended up getting it done towards the end of the game, running the football, and Jackson Dart had a great game. And then the Ole Miss defense, I mean, provided pressure on Drew Aller and Bo Prebulo. I mean, he threw a few passes in this game, the backup. He didn't look too bad either, but they provided pressure all game, and they held up in the secondary pretty well. We saw Nick Allen and Katron Allen, or excuse me, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, who are probably going to be the best running back duo in college football next season, go absolutely off in the first half. But Ole Miss was able to make adjustments at halftime and kind of slow them down in the second half. And I think that's kind of what this game came down to, Jake. It was the adjustments made by Ole Miss at halftime and the lack of adjustments made by Penn State. Penn State got out coached. James Franklin got out coached by Lane Kiffin. It was clear Ole Miss had the better athletes on their team and gave the SEC another bowl win. And it was good to see Jackson Dart. You know, I'm not saying you were the biggest hater on him, but I've been very supportive of Jackson Dart all season, and he kind of just solidified what I've been saying about him all season. And I think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback in college football next year, top 5 quarterback in the SEC.
Yeah, Jackson Dart played really good this game, but it's what you said. They were without their 4 best players on defense, and without their starting left tackle, who's going to be the first tackle picked in the draft.
Yep.
Penn State's offense played better than I thought they would. I didn't think they would put up 25 points, and especially whenever you look at the stats, and like you said, this was a game. It was 24-17 at half. It was really close, and then to start the second half, they had 3 straight 3-and-outs, a missed field goal, and then a fumble. So they shot themselves in the foot, and they lost it for themselves. Jackson Dart played really well. 25 for 40, 379 yards, 3 touchdowns. Played really well. I thought his receivers were doing a lot of it. Caden Prescourt, we'll talk about him later, was wide open the whole game. But
then made some incredible one-handed catches.
Dude, I think he made 3, maybe 2, but he made at least 2, I think 3. Just insane. And some of them could have been
speed inbounds too.
Some of them could have been caught with 2 hands, I will say that.
Yeah.
But still, he made them look cooler with 1 hand. But yeah, Trey Harris.
Why not,
Trey Harris was making a lot of plays, going up and getting 50-50 balls. And I mean, it's like you said, this Ole Miss team is going to be scary to watch next year. But again, I'm not going to take too much stock into it. It was a really good game to watch, really fun to watch. But Penn State's offense just shot themselves in the foot. Like I said, 3 straight 3-and-outs, a missed field goal, and then a fumble. I mean, they just got away from what they were doing. Like you said, they were going absolutely off in the first half. And then Nick Singleton and Katron Allen combined only finished with 18 carries. So they just weren't given the chance.
Can't have that.
They weren't given the chance in the second half. So their OC was fired. I don't think they've found a new one yet. I think it was some interim still. So we'll see what happens next year. But Ole Miss, like you said, Ole Miss is going to be scary. I mean, their transfer portal class on defense is already really good. Evan Stewart is still in the portal, and he's still looking at Ole Miss. I'm sure there's going to be some more that pop in and look at Ole Miss. So it'll be the only thing giving me hope is that we beat them by 40 or whatever it was this past year. So hopefully we can just repeat that next year.
Well, in Penn State, you were talking about the offense. They did Julian Fleming today from Ohio State. He did transfer. We talked about him a little bit more in the portal. But with a team like Penn State, everybody knows what their strength is on offense, and that's running the football. Even if you get down in the second half, you cannot abandon the run. If you're a team like that, and they did, and Drew Aller, a lot of people said he was going to be the guy that kind of redefined the quarterback position at Penn State, because they really haven't had a guy since. I mean, Sean Clifford was fine, and Trace McSorley was good for a college quarterback, but they haven't had a guy in a long time. And Drew Aller was the number 1 5-star quarterback, I think 2 years ago, 2 classes ago. And I'm not saying he hasn't panned out, but he has not been what everyone hyped him up to be. And maybe that's because people overhyped him, but he has not been the answer there. Hopefully he can get it figured out this offseason, because with Julian Fleming coming in and, next season, Ohio State's going to be more vulnerable. Michigan will definitely be more vulnerable in the Big Ten. You're adding USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon. And then Washington's obviously going to be vulnerable. They're going to be losing a lot of talent this year. So you're bringing back a lot at Penn State. You're losing some key players, but you're still bringing back a lot. Penn State really, they're going to have to figure it out, and hopefully, maybe they can take advantage of the opportunity in front of them. A team I just listed there was Oregon. And we'll just touch on this barely. They
Well,
obliterated. Oh, well, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, it was exactly. I just wanted to get the stats on it. In those first 5 possessions, like I said, three and outs, a missed field goal, and a fumble. The first 3 of them. So the three and outs, they had 4 rushing attempts from Katron and Nick Singleton combined. In the next 2, they only had 1. So in the first 5 drives of the second half, they only had 6 attempts from their 2 best players on offense. Because it's like you said, they have no weapons around them. I mean, their wide receivers suck. We thought Dante Cephas was going to be better this year.
And he's in the
Lambert
portal
Smith
too. He's in the portal.
Is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
We thought Lambert Smith could have been better. I mean, good thing they got Julian Fleming, but let's not act like he's, Marvin Harrison. He was number 3 on there. It's a really deep wide receiver core. He was number 3 on it. But he was the number 1 wide receiver out of high school. He was number 3 overall. Didn't do too much at Ohio State. Has a chance to do more at Penn State, but it's not like he's the best receiver ever. He'll be good there. I think so. I think he'll, probably have 750 yards this year. But they need more than just him. They need a lot more than just him. They need I don't know what playoff teams are going to have, what wide receivers are going to enter, but they need to go get someone else from one of those programs.
And if they could just land Evan Stewart, I mean, I don't know why they're not going to, but go ahead.
I assure you, Evan Stewart said no if they contacted. I would have said no.
Yeah, I would have to. But I mean, you throw some money out there at him, who knows what happens. But
I mean, that's the only places he's looking, because Tennessee throwing him a bag, Florida State throwing him a bag, Ole Miss throwing him a bag. So he's just going wherever the money is. So
yeah, same thing for his recruitment as well. I mean, that's what Texas A&M did in his recruitment. But yeah, I was sitting in the Fan Fest area for the Rose Bowl, and saw Liberty go up 6-0 and was like,
thought it was going to be a game.
Whoa! It was like, whoa. Then I stopped watching, and then I had no signal during the game. So we're on the interstate when I finally get signal after the Rose Bowl is over, and I look at the score and it's 45-6, and I was like, what? What happened? Like Caden Salter was going off and everything, and then you look at the stat sheet, Bo Nix. He did what he did all season long, except when they were playing Washington. 28-35 for 363 yards, 5 touchdowns. Bucky Irving went off. Tez Johnson went off. Former Alabama player Trayshawn Holden had a pretty solid day at the yard too. But this just goes to show you the lack of competition that Liberty played this year. I think they had the worst schedule records. What is it called? Like schedule record or like ranking or whatever. I don't know, but
I don't know what you're saying.
Strength of record. They had the worst record in college football. They were 13-0. They won their conference, but they didn't play anybody this year, and it showed. I mean, sorry. That was bad. But
no, I was gonna say now it's my turn. It's exactly like you said it was. You had Liberty ranked all year. I didn't rank them until like 10 because they didn't play a single soul. And I get it. Oregon's good. They had Bo Nix. They sucked this game. They did not look like a top 70 team.
Okay. I didn't, like I said, I didn't watch it enough to know, but
I watched it.
I still think Liberty's, they still could come. Oregon is a great team. I mean, they really are a great team. They lost 2 games to a team that's playing for the national championship right now.
And they didn't have a lot of opt-outs this game. It's like, I know they're a really good team.
They were basically at full strength. I think, did Troy Franklin play in this game?
No.
So yeah, I didn't see his name on the stat sheet. So
him and Kyrie Jackson, I think were the only 2 that sat out. Which I don't know why Kyrie Jackson sat out. That was weird. But Troy Franklin.
Yeah, Kyrie Jackson, weird guy. But anyway, yeah, Oregon domination, just pure domination. I don't know if you want to add on anything for that, but let's go to the last game, Missouri Ohio State. Another fun game. Fun game.
I'm a big fan of defensive games. That's why I really enjoyed watching Michigan Alabama. A lot of defense. This game, a little bit too much defense for my liking, but still a tremendous game.
And I want to say something about Devin Brown. Is it possible that Devin Brown was the worst quarterback that they threw out there in this game that Ohio State did?
No,
Lincoln Kienholz looked better than him to me. I thought Lincoln Kienholz when he was
game were you watching?
He threw a
what
few
game
passes,
were you?
No, he threw a few passes that probably should have been caught that were not caught. And
maybe
Emeka Egbuka, his freaking incomplete pass attempt looked better than anything Devin Brown threw all game. So
to be fair, Devin Brown went 4 for 6 and then he got hurt. Lincoln Kienholz
20 yards. For 20 yards, he took checkdowns.
Lincoln Keenholz had 17 attempts to do whatever he wants.
Too bad for Lincoln Keenholz, same situation as what's his face? Brock Glenn. Yeah, same situation
Yeah.
for Keenholz. But we talked about Missouri a lot this year. They're a really good team in the SEC. A very good defensive battle. Ohio State's defense, not underrated. They are properly rated. They are one of the best defenses in the country, and they proved it. I mean, they had a great game. But Missouri's defense was what I was the most surprised with because I knew they were good, but I didn't know they were good enough to compete with some of the really good athletes that Ohio
I
State had.
tried to tell you they were good.
Like
They're
Travion
really
Henderson, 19 carries for 72 yards for 3.8 yards a carry. Mika Ibuka only had 6 catches for 63 yards. I mean, I guess to a degree went off. I mean, he was really the only person on the Ohio State offense that showed a pulse in this game.
And the person
But
that doesn't show up on the stat list that did play in this game that was shut down was Cade Stover.
Stake over,
He
yeah.
played. He just didn't register a pass.
Non-factor. And a lot of it comes down to quarterback. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of it is that. And a lot of it, too, is the ability that Missouri was making these inexperienced quarterbacks for Ohio State throw the football. I mean, they were stacking the box. Like I said, Travion Henderson had average 3.8 yards a carry. You're not going to win a football game doing that. You're not going to win a football game averaging 2.9 yards as a team, especially on the ground. And Ohio State has been a passing team all year. They didn't have their main receiver, who's going to be the number one receiver in the country. They didn't have their now Syracuse quarterback, but let's be honest, he's better than the two other options they had. So a lot of it wasn't in their favor, and Missouri was basically playing everybody at full strength. And we've talked about Brady Cook all year and about how good Brady Cook is. Cody Schrader, I mean, phenomenal player. Luther Burton, but Missouri, weren't able to make plays in the first 3 quarters. It was the fourth quarter that it came down to, and that offense that Missouri had just shined a little bit brighter than the Ohio State, and it's because of that experience. It's because of Brady Cook being a better quarterback than whoever Ohio State was going to throw out. I mean, even if McCord played in this game, Brady Cook's still the best quarterback on the field. Cody Schrader, the best running back on the field. Luther Burden would have been he was the best receiver on the field that night, but if Marvin Harrison was playing, it wouldn't have been. But I still believe Missouri's receiving core was better than Ohio State's. I mean, with Marquise Johnson, Theo Wees, Cooper, Burden, I mean, those 4 guys to me are better than the 2 of Harrison and Ibuka. Because besides them, Carnell Tate wasn't much of a factor in this game. He had 1 catch for cards.
To be fair, it was Fleming as well.
True. So. Now true. But still, I mean, that and all those guys are coming back. That's going to be that was another team to watch for next year in the SEC is Missouri, who, in my opinion, has the easiest 2024 schedule. I mean, their hardest game is in Tuscaloosa, but they don't play Georgia. They don't play Texas. And most of their other tough games are at home.
They play Oklahoma. I think that's their second hardest game.
And I think they play Ole Miss too, but they play Ole Miss at home. Yeah. So they've got a pretty favorable schedule in a now really tough SEC schedule. So they're only going to continue to get better. Eli Drinkwitz was extended to 2028. I think that's a great move for Missouri. I think they found a really good head coach there. Wasn't he at like App State before or somewhere like that?
I don't know. That dude is so weird.
He's a weird guy, but he can coach. So got to give it to Missouri finishing their season 11-2. I saw something today that said their preseason win total was like 6.5, and they almost doubled that. So they have to be very excited at where they finish the season, and they're going to be a force in the SEC too next year, competing at the very top.
Yeah, he was at App State for a year and went 12-1. Good coach. I mean, turning around Missouri, they're going to be really good next year. So, like you said. Yeah, I think that's all the games we need to talk about.
Yeah.
So let's do helmet stickers. This isn't going to last too long since 5 out of our 6 players are from the New Year's Six Bowls, which we already talked about. So number 1, the best player of all the bowl games, Michael Penix, 430 for 2 touchdowns. And one of the things that you won't know it and his stats won't really show it, he had 3 rushes for 31 yards. 2 things. That means he took no sacks.
Yep.
And all 3 of those were scrambles for first downs. Yep. I think all in the second half, which he does not do. I think he tore his ACL.
13 rushing yards coming into that game.
Yeah, I think he tore his ACL at Indiana. He had some injury, and he used to run the ball a little bit, not a lot, but now just doesn't ever do it. He did it this game when he needed to. So he was just impressive all the way around. I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying that he was snubbed from the Heisman because of how well he played this game. I don't think that much. No. He looked like the best player in all of college football when he played against Texas. Because Texas, I know their pass defense is bad, but he looked really, really good.
And you got to take that, and we're going to talk about the Michigan-Washington game here in a minute. And you got to take that in consideration. I mean, Michael Penix is going to be the best player on the field next Monday night. I mean, he just is. So sometimes you got to take that star power into consideration when you're talking about a team. But you're right. He's tore both ACLs at Indiana, so in both legs.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be
I
tough
didn't
for him.
know it was two.
And I
Yeah.
saw someone compared him to Michael Vick, and I was like, maybe
That's
throwing motion, but
awful
Michael Vick
comparison.
could run the ball. He had 13 yards going into this game. But I saw a video, just on a side note. I saw a video today of Michael Penix throwing the ball right-handed, like what he
I
looked like.
saw that too. That
It
was
looks so smooth,
that
but
was
then when he throws it lefty, it doesn't look smooth. It's just something about the left-handed delivery. But on I'll do my first helmet sticker. I'm going to give it to the Michigan defense. I mean, just the whole defense in total: 6 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, 1 pass deflection, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery against Alabama. I mean, we talked about it a lot already. They were just the aggressor. They were the better team. They out schemed Alabama. They threw a lot of different exotic blitzes at the O line and got to the quarterback and provided constant pressure. So, Michigan defense, they were statistically one of the best defenses all year in the country. But a lot of people, including myself, and I think you as well, just wanted to see them prove it on the national TV screen against one of the better teams in college football, and they did it. And very excited to watch this. I know my team's not playing in it, but very excited to watch the national championship next week. I think it's going to be a great matchup.
Yeah. I was debating on giving it to them, but I didn't even know you were going to do that. The reason I didn't is only because Alabama had success running the ball. I didn't think they stopped the run too well.
They
They
didn't. They
they
didn't.
contained Jalen Milroe good enough, and they got after him well enough. It was just the run defense that wasn't, tremendous for me.
And I could have
But
given it
they
to
did
JJ McCarthy.
they played really well.
I could have given it to JJ McCarthy, and I thought about it, but I didn't want all three quarterbacks. And I still thought the Michigan defense was very impressive that they were able to get in the backfield that much on passes. So
I'll tell you who will get a helmet sticker taken away from them. Their whole special teams. If I am the special teams coordinator, I probably wouldn't have a job next week because that was awful. I mean,
yeah,
their punter needs to get cut. He was
if they
terrible.
have that again in the national championship game, it's going to
They're going to
cost them.
lose.
Yeah,
They're going to lose.
yeah.
Yeah, but my second one is Caden Prieskorn. Shout out to his wife and his kid who have a TikTok. And they were the only reason I knew who he was in going into the year. Because he was a transfer from Memphis. Nothing too great about him. Didn't have a great year at Memphis. Transferred, really just known as a blocking tight end. Didn't put up stats, but this game, I mean, and I don't think he's not this certified route runner. He just found himself open, made some one-handed catches, but 10 catches for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. So had himself a day. I know Mac, and I forget his wife's name. I think it starts with an M, but his kid's name is Mac. So I know they were happy for him on that day.
Yeah, yeah, he was. I mean, we talked about it already. He was absolutely insane. I'm gonna give my second helmet sticker. I've got two quarterbacks left, and I'll kind of just rattle them both together. I had Bo Nix, 28-35 for 363 yards, 5 touchdowns against Liberty. And then my last helmet sticker is Jackson Dart, 25 of 40 for 379, 3 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown against Penn State. So both of those guys, especially Bo Nix, kind of did what he's done all season. And then Jackson Dart, a guy who I've been pretty high on all year, had a really great performance, and he's going to be coming back next year. So excited to watch Jackson Dart. Happy Alabama's not playing Ole Miss next year, by the way. So
Must be
those are
nice.
my
We
three
got him
helmets.
in Oxford.
Yeah,
Um,
be tough.
so we've talked about how tough Ole Miss is going to be next year. Tennessee, going to be a tough team, and it's because tough team. It is going to be because of Nico. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name.
Lama
This
Lama.
his stats are not going to be amazing. When I say these, people watching are not going to be like, "Oh, this guy went off."
Yeah.
12 for 19, not bad. 151 yards, not a lot, with only 1 touchdown. Had 3 rushing touchdowns, but didn't put up great rushing stats. He just got into the end zone 3 times. So not a tremendous day. But I don't know when he knew that he was starting, but it was announced that he was the starter because Joe Milton was sitting out like 3 days before. I assume he only had about a week to prepare. Going up against a really good Iowa defense, top 5, at least top 10. And I've heard of the reasons why they're really good. And it's not that they're stacked with 5 stars and everything like that. They're just really, really good at making the quarterback make mistakes
Good
with
scheme.
their
Good
zone,
scheme.
with their zone reads and everything like
Yeah.
that. Again, I've seen videos. I don't know how to explain it, but this was a game that we told people, and I've heard, don't be concerned if Nico plays bad. He's supposed to play bad against Iowa. He played
Yeah.
really good.
He played
And
well.
and that was without some of their wide receivers, just without some starters. Next year, their offense is gonna be better. So, as a Georgia fan, I think we have Tennessee next year. I'm pretty sure we do.
We do. We play him in Neyland too. So
Actually, I don't think we do next year, which I will not complain about because Nico looked like he could
yeah,
dice up any single defense that he goes against.
yeah.
Especially that was his first time really playing this year. I mean, he had some garbage time, but dude, as a fellow SEC fan, as a college football fan, I'm happy to see it. He looked really good. Going to be promising. He's going to be a top 5 pick in the draft, certified. But as a Georgia fan, as an SEC fan, scared for him in the future.
It sucks for me because we're gonna be playing there next year. That's probably gonna be our toughest game because he's gonna have a lot of talent around him. I mean, Squirrel White's coming back, Brood McCoy's gonna be coming back. They got some other guys there. And they've been able to really run the ball with a lot of success this year, too, which is only going to help that passing offense. And he was able to run the ball for some success. And I know I was high on Joe Milton to start the year. You were not at all. But Tennessee was playing the wrong quarterback all year, it looked like, in this game. So, I mean,
I told you. I
this
tried
is
to
maybe
tell people.
one of the toughest defenses they played all season. I mean, they did play Georgia and Alabama, which are probably a little bit tougher than Iowa defensively. But I mean, he looked great against a really bad or against a really good Iowa defense who really didn't have anyone sit out. I mean, Cooper DeJean played in this game. I mean, pretty much everybody that they've been going, they went full strength. And then my guy Deacon Hill just got out, just two interceptions. He was
Not
off.
your guy. He was
So
he was
yeah,
dude was doing his best to sell. But yeah, okay, never mind. We play Tennessee, at Alabama, then Auburn, then Mississippi State, then at Texas, then Florida, then at Ole Miss, and then Tennessee. So
tough. That's
yeah,
tough. Well,
yeah.
let's end on the national championship preview. Let's go to a little bit of transfer portal here, and we'll kind of start with Alabama because
Well, let me start because it's not. We've talked about Georgia transfer portal because it's been a thing, so it won't take that long.
okay, that's fine.
Bama's going to take a little bit longer because,
Yeah.
as we've said, you know,
Everyone just hit the
no
exit
one's really
button.
going to enter until after they lose, and now it was mass exodus today because that's how it is.
Yeah,
But Georgia hasn't had any players since the last time we really talked, but they have had two big scares. One cornerback. We have two open positions next year at corner because Kamari's leaving. He's going to be a first, second rounder. Dalen Everett and Julian Humphrey were fighting over that position, the opposite of Kamari this year. And Dalen Everett got most of the time, and then Julian, when he was playing his best against Ole Miss, got hurt and didn't play the rest of the year. So it looks like the other side is going to be the opposite. So it looks like Dalen Everett locked down one side of the field. The other side of the field is going to be between Julian Humphrey and Daniel Harris and Ellis Robinson, who's an absolute freak, going to be a freshman. But Daniel Harris and Julian Humphrey both entered the portal and withdrew. So Daniel Harris entered 5 days before the game, practiced with the team after the game, announced that he's staying. Julian Humphrey said he was going to stay before the game. Actually, hinted towards him leaving. I forgot to say this. After Bama, hinted towards him leaving and then stayed with the team. And then after the game, or yesterday, he entered the portal. Today, he said he's coming back. So just crazy stuff going around. I think we still have two opportunities for transfers to come into our program. I know we're getting a Marshall edge rusher on campus for a visit. Outside of that, I don't know who we're going after, but I mean, I don't know if I've talked about it, but the three guys we got after London Humphreys in Trevor Etienne, Colby Young, and Xavier McLeod. I mean, our transfer class, I think, is one of the best just because, yeah, we didn't go get 18 players like Colorado, or we didn't get 12 players like Ole Miss, but we got 4 spots that we really needed, with all SEC guys, aside from Colby Young, who's a 6'5" receiver from Miami, going to be a really good immediate contributor. But Trevor Etienne, one of the best backs in the whole nation, top 5 back in the SEC,
yeah,
is now a dog. And then London Humphreys, who is 6'3" and runs like a sub 10 100-meter, extremely fast and extremely long. Also on our team, who was a freshman All-American at Vandy. So just amazing to see for our transfer portal. I assume we're still going to have like 1 or 2 entries. Just that's the way college football is. Actually,
yeah.
no, we're not. I take that back. It closed for Georgia yesterday, or today. Either way, I forgot it's closed for all of college football except for the teams that are in the playoff or made the playoff. Because after they lose, so Alabama and Texas have 5 more days, and then Washington and Michigan have 5 days after they lose or after the game.
Yeah.
So I forgot about that. So our
Yeah.
our transfer portal is the players that have already entered, they're out. So.
Well, like you said, Alabama definitely had a lot of stuff going on today. 9 players entered the transfer portal today for Alabama. 3 of them starters. But a lot of these guys, a lot of Alabama. When you hear that stat as a college football fan, you go, "Wow, that's not good at all." You're losing 9 guys, but I think all 9 of these guys that we lost are guys not necessarily who we needed to lose, but guys we're not going to hurt to not have next year on the team. Go and start with the 3 starters. Obviously, Seth McLaughlin needed to go, need to see him somewhere else. Do not need him snapping the ball any longer to Jalen Milroe, and I think Jalen Milroe might appreciate that as well. Safety Christian Story. He's a native of Lynette, Alabama, near where we live, about 20 minutes from where we live. But he was a starter at Money this year, another rotational guy at safety. He's in the portal. And then Malik Benson, who was pretty much wide receiver 3, a starter. He was the #1 player from JUCO last year. Just never really panned out for Alabama. So he's also in the portal. Earl Little, a defensive back, a reserve defensive back.
Was he the one that had that pick in the
In the spring game,
A
yes.
Day? That
Yes.
was crazy.
Yeah. Earl Little's in. A reserve defensive lineman, Monkel Goodwine. Another reserve interior O lineman, Terrence Ferguson, who had a couple starts this year for us, but just Jaden Roberts, the right guard, took over for him.
Is
He's also in the portal.
Tyler
Um,
Booker going to the draft?
No, he's only a sophomore, so he'll be back. But the 5th string quarterback, Eli Holstein, he's in the portal. The 5th string tight end, Miles Kitzelman, he's also in the portal. Shaz Preston, another guy who was a really high recruited 4-star receiver a couple years ago, just never found time on the field for Alabama. He's also in the portal. Another reserve defensive lineman, Isaiah Hastings, went to the portal. And then obviously the 3 who've already transferred, Anquin Barnes transferred to Colorado. He was a reserve D lineman. Ja'Cory Brooks caught the touchdown pass against Auburn in 2021, but was pretty much never heard from again. He transferred to Louisville. And then Tyler Buckner transferred back to Notre Dame to play lacrosse. So those are the 13 in the portal so far for Alabama, and I expect at least probably 5 or 6 more to go in the portal in the coming days. But the one big state guy that we got to remain at Alabama so far is Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson announced he's going to return to Alabama for next season. Going to be the backup quarterback, so that's good, great for depth there, just in case something happens to Jalen Milroe. And who knows? I mean, I know Julian Sain's already on campus with us, but after next season, Jalen Milroe will probably turn pro, and then Ty Simpson will be battling out with Julian Sain and Dylan Lonergan for the starting job. So you never know. Julian Sain, highly rated guy. So is Ty Simpson. Never know what could happen in a quarterback battle. So that's great for depth wise. And then I think we're probably going to lose maybe because I think we have currently 12 inside linebackers on this team's next year's team.
That's a lot.
Gonna have to lose some of those guys. I imagine we're gonna be searching for a center in the portal. We have James Brockermeyer still on the roster, and then we have a redshirt freshman, Rock Montgomery, who could contribute at that position. And then a freshman coming in, and Casey Poe, he was the #1 interior offensive lineman who could play center, but highly doubt a true freshman goes and plays center their first season in college football. You don't really ever see that. But like I said, most of these guys were guys who needed to go. I think you'll see some more guys enter pretty soon. In terms of Alabama grabbing somebody out of the portal, like I said, a center is what I'm looking for. Maybe a secondary guy. Even though Terrion Arnold is rumored to stay next season, he's rumored that he's possibly going to stay for another year. He was quoted as saying, "We have unfinished business after the Rose Bowl game," so he could stay, which would, I mean, you always want what's best for a guy. He would probably be a first-round pick, but if he does stay, he will be the #1 DB in college football next year, more than likely. So he could make himself some more money by staying next year, but who knows? If you get hurt, that's not good. It's looking like Roydell Williams and Jason McClellan are both going to declare for the draft. So that's another thing. Jermaine Burton's probably going to be gone, declaring for the draft. J.C. Latham has already declared for the draft. Dallas Turner has already declared for the draft. Chris Braswell is expected to go.
Dude, Dallas Turner wasted no time. Like 10 minutes after the loss, he said, "I'm out of here."
He was emotional. What I heard was when he was very emotional when he said that. But another
Emotional or pissed? I thought he was pissed.
I think it was both. Well, I mean, just both. You got reporters in your face asking you what you're going to do next year right after you lose. I mean, you're bound to say something. But Deontay Lawson, starting middle linebacker, probably going to stay. That's another huge get. So, or another huge guy at staying. So there's a lot left to go for Alabama, like you said. There's still 5 days left in that process.
And we still have the spring because last year is when Bear Alexander entered on G-Day. I mean, good thing he left. Don't like it.
So we just covered Georgia and Alabama.
Spring is going to be crazy.
Yeah, but let's talk about some other guys, some other big names who've entered the portal. Not the biggest name ever, but Cole Martin, a DB from Oregon. He's a 4-star. He's listed as one of the best DBs in the he was a freshman this past year, but listed as one of the best DBs in the country, entered today. And then we were talking about Dante Cephas from Penn State. He also entered today. He's listed as a 2-star in the transfer portal thing right now. So I guess that just goes to show you about the talent that they have there. But going down the list a little bit further, Dorian Singer, the receiver from USC, in the portal as well today. Let's see who else. I saw some other interesting ones in here.
I thought there wasn't any.
Silas Bolden, the receiver from Oregon
I
State.
did see that one. That one.
Uh,
That one was
that I mean, obviously his coach went over to Michigan State, so that could be one. And
or
then
maybe he wants to go to Florida State and follow DJU. I don't
maybe he follows DJU there. Caden Salter, the quarterback from Liberty, really good player. Has the Hugh Freeze connection. Played for Hugh Freeze last year when Freeze was at Liberty. Maybe Caden Salter goes and helps out Auburn a little bit because good Lord, we didn't talk about that game. They need it. I mean, they threw a 4-string
know.
true freshman in there who played better than Peyton Thorne did. So
That game was like 27-0 in 20 minutes. It was
yeah,
bad.
it was bad. And another big one, Lance Hurd, the offensive tackle, the starting right tackle from LSU this past year, a true freshman, got a lot of playing time left. Another guy that, offensive tackle is a position that's really coveted, especially if you were that talented coming out of high school. So he's another one. And I know this isn't like a big one either, but I just saw this because I was pretty interested. Malik Hornsby, the backup quarterback for Arkansas, um, he was at Texas State this past year. And he is back in the portal, and he's a pretty
He was
solid.
he was TJ Finley's backup.
Yes, he was TJ Finley's backup this year. TJ Finley beat him out for the starting job, but another talented player that's in the portal. So there's still some stuff going on in the portal. Jalen Brown, another receiver from LSU. So uh, portal season's still going to be going. We're still going to be watching out for that, especially with the Natty coming up soon with that game. There's going to probably be some players from each team going into the portal there. Still left for Alabama, still some left for Texas too, I would assume. Um, but with that, Jake, let's break down the national championship game. We'll finish it off there.
Yeah.
Go ahead and start. What's your analysis on this game? What do you think is going to happen? Who's going to be the winner?
Yeah, I won't take too long because I'm so excited to watch this game, and I don't know what's going to happen because it's the other two games were kind of same two teams, very similar teams going at it. This going to be two more polar opposites.
Yep.
You have a not great Michigan offense, hasn't been great, wasn't great against Alabama. They made a lot of mistakes themselves. Alabama has a really good defense, but Michigan shot themselves in the foot a lot, especially on special teams. And then you have Washington, who can score whenever they want, pretty much. I mean, they weren't doing that great, and then Michael Penix dropped a dot, and then it was a 77-yard touch, or I think 77-yard to the 1-yard line, and then they rushed it in. So, I mean, you have someone who can score from all over the field, and then Michigan can seemingly only score from about the 5-yard line, going up against each other. And then looking at them on defense, Michigan, stacked defense. Washington, not great, but can play well.
Yeah.
They were playing really well against Texas, and then Texas in the second half, Washington was just trying to put it away, was trying not to lose and almost lost. Story of Georgia's life, trying not to lose and then almost lost. Sometimes do lose. So good for them. But like I said, couldn't it be more different teams? Don't know how it's going to go. Can't lie, I am cheering so hard for Washington.
Oh yeah.
I was kind of cheering for the SEC with Alabama against Michigan. Didn't care too much who won that game. All I knew is that if Washington won, I was cheering extremely hard for the Huskies. Because also I found out I went to school with their safety. What was his name? Asa Turner. I went to school in Korea with him, which my mom told me when we were watching the game, which I had no clue. So another reason to pull for the Huskies.
Yeah.
So I will say bias is not aside. Bias is fully in this. I'm cheering for the Huskies. I think they're going to win. I think their offense is going to be too much to stop. And I think because you saw how you didn't see it, but Washington's defense wasn't playing extremely bad against Texas, who has a really, really good offense.
Yeah.
Michigan has no weapons. They have Roman Wilson is okay. He is not a wide receiver one. He is only a wide receiver one on teams that don't have one. And Colton Loveland is decent. He's not a great tight end, but he's not bad. Probably
He's pretty good.
a little bit above average. But that's it. That is all they have. Um, so I think their defense is going to play well enough to win this game. I think Roma Dunze and Michael Penix and Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan and Dylan Johnson, if he's healthy, all the players they have on offense, they're all just going to be able to carry. And also, I forgot to mention when I was giving out helmet stickers, Michael Penix didn't take a sack against Texas, and Texas has a really good front seven. He didn't
Yeah.
get sacked a single time. So Michigan, I think they will get home a couple of times, but it's not like they're going up against bums. They're not going to be able to sack him 5 times and a half like they did against Alabama. I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm going to say the score of this game is 34 27.
Okay.
Watch.
Well, I've
Actually, no, they are not hitting 2 field goals. That's a lie. I'll say 34-28.
well, you can say 34-27, and they'll just miss another extra point. I mean,
You're right. That's how it's going to be 34-27, and they're missing it on a PAT. Who was honest when you look at PATs, typically they're either a bad hold or a bad snap or like the laces facing in, whatever happens. The holder just missed it. It went through his hands, and it wasn't the greatest snap ever. But like he had it here, and then it was so funny.
yeah, like you though, I'm pulling so hard for Washington in this game because
So hard.
everything that's been surrounding Michigan this year, and like I said, their fans not bad at all. They're very curt. That I wouldn't say they were nice.
That's surprising.
I just respected them a lot. I mean, they didn't really talk trash or anything, but just with all the controversy surrounding them, I think the whole nation is pulling for Washington
Yeah.
in this game. A lot of people just want the Michigan fans to kind of feel a little bit of how they're feeling in this game.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to go against the Michigan experience in this game because they've been there and they've done that. I think they just beat the maybe second or third best team in the playoff in Alabama. They were controlled the game from the game to end. I think the coaching staff at Michigan's a little bit better with Jim Harbaugh. I mean, they outcoached Nick Saban. And not to discredit Kalen DeBoer. I mean, he's fantastic. I mean, I think after this year, just everyone's gonna know who his name is after this year, and maybe even after this game, especially if they win the national championship. And another hard thing for me is Michael Penix is going to be the best player on this field. So how can you go against him? But I just think this experience from Michigan, the coaching staff and the experience is going to prevail for them. I do think Washington covers the 4.5, but I think Michigan is going to win the football game, win a close game.
I
I
like
think
it.
I just don't know. I'm just going to go with the experience and with coaching staff. I think that there are two mismatches on this field. I think Michigan's going to be able to run the ball very well against Washington with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, and I think they'll be able to have some success in the play action game. I don't necessarily think they're going to control the game, but I do think with their pass defense. I mean, I was able to watch it firsthand. Obviously, Washington's pass defense is pass offense is night and day better than Alabama's, but and yes, they have much better weapons, but I think they're going to get home a few times, maybe force a Michael Penix interception or a fumble that wouldn't happen usually. So I'm going to go Michigan in a close one. Like I said, I think Washington is going to cover the spread at 4.5, which is very slim. I mean, I think it's going to be field goal or less in this game, but I just got to go with experience. I got to go with the better coaching staff. So I'm going to go Michigan to win the game. I hate that I'm going to do that, but and then you and I have conflicting viewpoints. So one of us can say we're right and the other one can say we're wrong. And maybe we can hold it over the other one's head. So, but
Hey,
it's
good for
going to be a great game.
you. Made your prediction unbiased. Like I said, mine is completely biased. Honestly, if I had to pick without it, I'd probably say Michigan by 3 or by 7. But I don't want to do that. I hate Michigan, especially with everything that happened this year. So pulling hard for the dogs.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a good one. We'll be back next week to break down that. We'll talk more transfer portal next week. But after that, guys, it'll be a new season of Just Saying. We'll go to the off season. Josh Pate doesn't like to say off season, but man, this season's really run by really fast. It's been a fun one. Even though both of our teams didn't finish where they wanted to finish, it's still been fun to watch them play. But we're looking forward to getting back here next week, kind of talking about the national championship game a little bit. Both of us will be back in school. I know you're headed back to Athens tomorrow, and I'm headed back to Tuscaloosa next week. So, but looking forward again to talk with you next week, Jake. So you guys remember to like, subscribe, tell some people about us. And with that being said, roll Tide.
Go dogs.